This message is brought to you by House on the Rock Fellowship. We're a church that serves and cares for the Miami Valley region in Ohio. Before you continue, make sure to access the notes from our download section of our message page and have your Bible ready. Thank you for being our guest.
Good morning. Let me introduce myself. My name is Paul. I'm the pastor here and one of the elders. It means a lot that you join us. To our guests, hello to you. Thank you for being here. I want to highlight a couple of things I'm very thankful for. One of them yesterday, we had a ladies' tea, a ladies' retreat. They gathered together here. I want to thank the team who put all those things together. Probably easily a third of the ladies that gathered weren't even from our fellowship. People had been invited, other churches that had come. A good time learning about what it means to not be wallflowers, but be wild flowers. Right, Mo? Did I get that right? Rooted in God, rooted, thriving, and blooming. And it was a beautiful bouquet of God's grace. So I'm thankful for that event yesterday. And also, Adam and I are celebrating our catechism class that just finished. And we're very thankful. The whole year-long journey, are they up there? Yeah. We're very proud of them. Adam and I teach together. He's one of our elders. We teach this class. And every Sunday evening at 5 o'clock, this class gets together as we work to root them in the Word of God and help form and shape and give them a foundation of truth, prayer, and the Apostles' Creed, and an ethic from the Ten Commandments. What is the gospel? But beyond the class at 5 o'clock, they do ministry projects and hope projects. They are growing, and we're very excited and thankful for each of them. Haley was not able to be there when the picture was taken, but she also did a great job. Very thankful for all of them. And currently, we have 2 classes that are in rotation. They continue to meet at 5 o'clock. Pray for them. It's a big ask. It's a big commitment. Building your life upon Jesus Christ. Very thankful for them. Well, in my office, I have lots of whiteboards. I like my whiteboards. One of them is a massive, almost the entire wall. It's just kind of where I thought vomit stuff. And whatever's in my head, I try to get it up there and doodle and draw and connect and write and scribe and list. But another one that's right next to my desk is much smaller, and it's divided into 4 columns. It's basically the 4 sermons that are coming up next. I try to think through, pray through what's the next passage about 30 days in advance. Because there are lots of factors that come together. Worship leaders like to know what the passage is going to be so they can think through songs and themes. Maybe there's some creative things that we'd like to do. Maybe there's some alignment that happens in the community. And so I try to work about 30 days out. 30 days out from this Sunday, 30 days ago, I landed on preaching a passage from John chapter 17. I felt that's where the Spirit wanted us to be, where Jesus is praying, and he prays for himself, he prays for his followers, then he prays for all of us. He prays about the importance of unity, that our unity is to reflect their unity in the Godhead. In fact, one of the most beautiful expressions of evangelism is how unified his followers are. And I thought, yeah, I think that's where we need to be. And I was outlining and researching on Monday. But then Thursday rolled around. We as a church family are reading through Scripture together, chronologically reading through the Bible. And on Thursday, the boys and Elise, my wife, we were doing our reading. And the reading was from Psalm 106 and Psalm 107. And it just really grabbed a hold of me, Psalm 107 did. Because it addresses people who are all coming from a different place. And we, as a fellowship, are a bunch of people coming from all different places. From the north, from the south, from the east, from the west. Spiritually, all coming from different places. And I think there's something in that psalm that really could help us as a church family. So I set aside John chapter 17. And those of you who brought your John journals and are cursing me underneath your breath because you didn't bring your whole Bible, you just brought the journal, that's fine. There are copies of the Bible in the seats in front of you. We're going to be in Psalm 107. Because one of the things, and I believe one of the most important things, and this is something if you're taking notes I would write down. Okay, we're going to try to develop this idea this morning. That Jesus leverages our place to lovingly pick up our pace. Let me say that again, then I'll open it up. Jesus leverages our place, where we are spiritually, to lovingly pick up our pace. It says this in Psalm 107. I'm going to start reading in verse 33. He turns rivers into a desert, springs of water into thirsty ground, a fruitful land into salty waste because of the evil of its inhabitants. But he turns a desert into pools of water, parched land into springs of water. And there he lets the hungry dwell. Jesus, in his grace and love, knows that none of us have arrived. All of us have steps to take on our journey towards him, a journey towards promise and community and deeper faith. None of us are where we're supposed to be. There's always another step each of us need to be taking. And we're all in different places. And what we're going to see this morning is that he will take things in that place that we are, and he will leverage them, use them to motivate us towards a closer walk with him. Some of us we're going to see are in a wilderness this morning, and you're tired. Oh, are you tired? You are weary. That's okay. He has something for you. Some of you are in a prison of sin, and you feel the weight of the chains. You feel the restraint. You feel the pressing of that disobedience. I'm glad that you're here today. Some of you have dug yourself into a pit, and the Bible's word is fool. You wouldn't listen, and you charged ahead, and now you've brought everything that you hold dear right to death's door. I'm glad that you're here. Some of you are in deep waters. Deep waters. You are at A and you are moving towards B, and B is a beautiful thing, but hell will not go quietly into the night. And so you are experiencing the waves of chaos, and the storm is blowing because it does not want you to get to better shores. I'm glad that you're here today too. So if you haven't yet, let's find Psalm 107. 107, as Jesus leverages our place to lovingly pick up our pace. Some of us are comfortable. Some of us are complacent. Some of us need correction. Some of us need compassion. What you need to do this morning is ask yourself, where am I? Where am I? Not where am I? Where are you? Not where is your spouse? Not where is your neighbor? I don't want to see any elbows. Did you hear what he said? I don't want dirty looks. You wrestle with. Where am I? Father, in my walk with you, where am I? And secondly, what is Jesus doing? What is Jesus doing? Let's look at these 4 places together. The first one is the wilderness, and it comes in verses 4 through 9. Psalm 107, verses 4 through 9. And Carolyn, she'll have the verses up on the screen so you can follow along if you like. Psalm 107, I'm going to start reading in verse 4. Some wandered in desert wastes, finding no way to a city to dwell in. Hungry, thirsty, their soul fainted within them. Then they cried to the Lord in their trouble. He delivered them from their distress. He led them by a straight way till they reached a city to dwell in. Let them thank the Lord for his steadfast love, for his wondrous works to the children of man. For he satisfies the longing soul. The hungry soul he fills with good things. What does it mean to be in the wilderness? How do you know that you're a wilderness walker? The person in the wilderness finds no way forward. They don't know how to get from where they are to where they need to be. We're just wandering aimlessly. We don't see the straight path. And all those aspects of our spiritual life feel like the desert. They have dried up. Yes, we're worshiping, but it feels dry. Yes, we're in prayer, but it's dry prayer. Yes, I'm reading the Bible, Pastor, like you tell me to read the Bible, but it's just dry. I go to life group, but it's just dry. Everything is dried up, and I'm tired. Pastor, I'm tired. I'm hungry. I'm thirsty. Like it says in verse 5. Hungry and thirsty, their soul fainted within them. Their soul fainted within them. What we need to understand, and it's unique to the wilderness, every follower of Jesus will at one time or another find themselves in the wilderness. Not because of disobedience, but because it's in the wilderness where he is inviting us into a deeper obedience with him. Israel, to get from Egypt to the promised land, had to go through the wilderness. Now, they decided to stay there a whole lot longer than they needed to. That's on them. Many of us have been in the wilderness for far too long. That's on you. But it's in the wilderness where we learn deeper obedience. We don't know the path. So daily, regularly, I have to tune into my Jesus. What are we going to do next? All right, today we're going to do this. That he might lead them on the straight path. That means the way that's intended, the good way that actually takes you somewhere until you reach that city. And so what does he do? He leverages that hunger. He leverages that thirst. Those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, they will be satisfied. They are satisfied. And you will hunger and you will thirst until, like Jesus said, I am the bread of life. We learn to find our sustenance in him and him alone. How many of you have been in the wilderness before? Look at all those hands. Look around. Yeah, give thanks to the Lord. Yeah, been in the wilderness. I've been in the wilderness. I'm in the wilderness. Yeah. And we cried out to the Lord, and in his steadfast love, he heard us. Would you repeat after me? Your steadfast love endures forever. Let's say that. Your steadfast love endures forever. Again, your steadfast love endures forever. We've been in that wilderness. We've been in that spiritually dry place, not knowing how to move forward. But he comes along, he leads us in his love. He takes us out. Maybe you're in the wilderness today. That's okay. Please don't stay there. Let's fix our eyes upon Jesus, who's the author and the perfecter of our faith. Well, maybe you're not in the wilderness. Maybe you're in this place. Maybe you're in the prison of sin. Maybe you're in the prison of sin. Verse 10 through 16. Verses 10 through 16. Some sat in darkness and in the shadow of death, prisoners in affliction and in irons, for they had rebelled against the words of God and spurned the counsel of the Most High. So he bowed their hearts down with hard labor. They fell down with none to help. Then they cried to the Lord in their trouble, and he delivered them from their distress. He brought them out of darkness in the shadow of death and burst their bonds apart. Let them thank the Lord for his steadfast love, his wondrous works to the children of man. For he shatters the doors of bronze and cuts the bars too. The prison of sin. What does that place feel like? It feels like gloom. It's heavy. It's dark. You're bound up. You're carrying the weight and the chains of rebellion, and they are crushing you. It's addiction. It's stronghold, and it presses down. You can't move forward. You are stuck sitting in that misery. You are stuck in that conviction. The full bearing and the consequences of your rebellion have come down upon you, and you can't go anywhere or do anything. And he leverages that. In his grace, hear me, in his grace, he lets us feel the consequences of our sin. In our grace, He lets us sleep in the bed that we made. For the choices that we've made, the actions that we have chased after, destroy ourselves, destroy loved ones, destroy his good kingdom, destroy his testimony, destroy the creation that he's laboring to restore. And he lets us feel that. He lets us feel this prison. Some sat in darkness, in the shadow of death, prisoners in affliction and in irons. Why? They rebelled against the words of God. They spurned his counsel of the Most High. And some of us have cried out, pleaded, raised our voice, cried in the middle of the night. And what does he do? He breaks the bonds. In his love, he shatters the bronze and the bonds and the chains and the weights. Who here knows what it's like to be in a prison of sin? To feel that weight upon your shoulders. And to feel, you can actually feel the chains fall off, can't you? You can actually feel the soul restored, how in his graciousness he takes you crushed and beaten and contorted, treasonous and corrupt, and he puts the good soul back together again, and by his Spirit breathes life into you again. Like Jesus calling forth Lazarus out of the tomb. Get those bonds off of him. Let him walk free. Yeah. Your steadfast love endures forever. Would you say that? Your steadfast love endures forever. You give thanks to him. You give thanks to him who sets you free. For he who the Son has set free is free indeed. Oh, you know that one. That's a good one. That's a good one. Oh, I have found myself chained and bound. What a loving God who would look upon the traitor and wrap his arms around him and lead him out of the jail. And yet sometimes I'll just go right back into prison. Like he will set me free and I will walk free. Like, oh, no, I want to go back into the gloom. I want to go back into the shadow of death. I want to go back into the chains. And I start wrapping the chains back up on me again. He's like, what are you doing? Come on. Like, I know, but yeah, such is sin. And such is the depth of his grace and his love for us. Amen? Your steadfast love endures forever. Well, maybe that's not you. Maybe you're not in the wilderness. Maybe you're not in a prison of sin. Maybe you're in this place. I've found myself here a lot. And that is the pit of fools. A pity to fool. Yes, children of the 80s, unite. Verse 17 through 22. Verse 17 through 22. Some were fools through their sinful ways, and because of their iniquities suffered affliction. They loathed any kind of food, and they drew near to the gates of death. Then they cried to the Lord in their trouble, and he delivered them from their distress. He sent out his word and healed them, and delivered them from their destruction. Let them thank the Lord for his steadfast love, for his wondrous works to the children of man, and let them offer sacrifices of thanksgiving and tell of his deeds in the songs of joy. Oh, the fool. The fool knows better. The fool knows best. You can't teach a fool anything. The fool knows, oh, God, please, I've got this. I know, but I've got this. And the fool will continue to go through an attitude of rebellion and arrogance, march themselves right up to death's door. And they'll drag their marriage there. They'll drag their career there. They'll drag their faith there till they dig themselves in such a pit. Eventually, they'll cry out for grace. Oh, the pit of fools. It's in that space where God begins to leverage something in a unique way. Because the heart has gotten so hard, to break the will, he will break our body. Sometimes, to break our will, he will break our body. Some were fools through their sinful ways, and because of their iniquities, their actions, their attitudes, they suffered affliction. How bad? They couldn't even eat. They drew near to the gates of death. That's not something a loving God would do. That's exactly something a loving God would do. I love my sons, but when they were younger, I would crack them. A lot of good padding back there. Just enough to get attention. Because you're going down a path that's going to lead to destruction. You're going down a path that's going to get you into a pit. That word destruction there in that verse literally means pit. You're digging yourself into a pit. But God wouldn't do that. You're just a bad dad. When the Apostle Paul is teaching on the Lord's table in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, they have completely screwed this up. It's not a sacrament of holiness to them. It's become this feast, this buffet where the haves have more and the have-nots have none. And so the Apostle Paul works to gather them back to a holy reverence for communion. This is not a participation award, okay? It's not what this is. It's a sacred participation, a sacred gathering, a sacred giving forth, back and forth between Jesus and his followers, by which we receive grace and are sustained. And Paul says to the church, he says, some of you have gotten sick over this. Some of you have actually died because of the arrogance of your heart and how you approach the table. Jesus in his grace, because of the arrogance in their heart, will break their will by breaking their body. As they continue to dig their marriage into a hole, and to dig their faith into a hole, and dig their finances into a hole, and dig their parenting into a hole, and dig their friendships into a hole, because they are they know best. Oh, pastor, please, mind your own business. Keep your nose out of it. You do you. You do you. Let me know when the shovel's too heavy. And they cry out. How many of you have been in the pit of fools before? How many of you have been in that pit? Found yourself, you dug yourself in such a pit. You had to cry out. There was no way you were getting out of this on your own. But in his loving kindness, what does he do? He delivers. He delivers. He delivers. Your steadfast love, what? Endures forever. Your steadfast love endures forever. The number of times he's gotten me out of a hole. Number of times he's let me sit in it for a while too. Maybe you find yourself in that place today. One more. Maybe you're not in the wilderness. Maybe you're not in that prison of sin. Maybe you're not in a pit of fools. But maybe you are in deep water. You are in deep water. Verse 23 through 32. Verse 23 through 32. Some went down to the sea in ships, doing business on great waters. They saw the deeds of the Lord, his wondrous works in the deep. For he commanded and raised the stormy wind, which lifted up the waves of the sea. They mounted up to the heaven. They went down to the depths. Their courage melted away in their evil plight, and they reeled and staggered like drunken men and were at their wits' end. Then they cried to the Lord in their trouble, and he delivered them from their distress. He made the storm be still. The waves of the sea were hushed. And then they were glad that the waters were quiet. He brought them to their desired haven. Let them thank the Lord for his steadfast love, for his wondrous works to the children of man. Let them extol him in the congregation of the people and praise him in the assembly of the elders. Are you in deep waters? Are you in deep waters? Deep waters by no means is the place of foolishness or disobedience. The fact is, you are in A, and you sense God calling you to B. You've established here, and he's now calling you to there. But for you to go there, to a new port, to a new haven, to set up a new beachhead and a new mission and raise a banner for the kingdom and pitch a flag in the sand for Jesus, hell ain't going to have anything to do with it. And so chaos waters are coming at you full force. You have moved into deep waters where monsters dwell, where the waves are big. The wind is fierce, and you feel it. You feel it. You feel it in your bones. Feel it. It says, I just want to make sure that we understand from an interpretive perspective, okay, in case there's a question. It talks about their courage melting away in their evil plight. Okay, that word 26. When it says evil plight, not that they're on an evil path, it's that it's a bad storm. In the presence of a bad storm and big waves and harsh winds, their courage melts away. They're called to business, and he will bring them to that place. But he's actually going to leverage that storm to bring you to a deeper place of prayer. He will use the chaos so that you'll partner with him in prayer. Well, think about it. How many of you have been in open waters during a storm? Anyone been in open waters during a storm? Some of you are like, I live in Ohio, man. This Ohio. Like a pond? No, like open waters where you can't see shore. You know what you do when you're in that kind of water? You're not up on deck at the cabana sipping Mai Tais and umbrella drinks. You're down below and the hatches are lashed and you're getting as low as you possibly can and you're getting down. You're not standing. You're not dancing. It is bringing you down. He is bringing you down to a place of lowness because these waters are beyond you. These waves are beyond you. So that in prayer you'll partner with him. Raised high, brought low. He rocks our boat, so we'll partner with him in prayer. He wants us to get to that space. He brings us into that promised haven. But that's a farther place than you've ever been before, which means the relationship has to go deeper than it's ever been. So he brings us to those prayer grounds, those humbled grounds. How many of you have been in deep waters before? Some of you know deep waters, don't you? Yeah. Oh, it's good. It's good. You got to hold on. The disciples, they're in the boat. These are longshoremen, deep water fishermen. They know storms, but this storm has taken them to the brink, and they can't get to where they need to be. And they are crying out, and here he comes walking on the waves, walking on the waters, and he says, peace, be still. And they're more overwhelmed by his presence than they were the presence of the storm. And that's exactly what needs to happen. That we would become so overwhelmed by the one who commands the storm than by the actual waves themselves. They cried out, your steadfast love, what? Endures forever. Say it again. Your steadfast love endures forever. He has brought me through deep waters. He is currently bringing our church family into deep waters. That there is a point A, and he is leading us to a point B. There is another haven, another harbor, an expanded ministry that he has intended for us, designed for us. But do you think that the monsters want us to get there? Do you think hell in all of its might wants to see the ministries of this fellowship expand and increase? I'm excited tonight. We have an elders meeting, and we have some wonderful business people that are joining us around the table as we begin to think through and redream what the operations of this church need to look like and how they need to adapt and grow and expand. Doug and I still laugh, and you brought it up in the first. I'm going to take your joke away. Okay, so I want you. Oh, you guys, when we first started this church, okay, which we weren't planning on starting, it just happened. And people started to give for the ministry. We weren't established enough or had a history enough to have a banking account, a checking account, a savings account. So Doug, week after week, carried around affectionately what we called the football. It was a metal box with thousands of dollars in it. And he would joke, he carried the box and I carried the key. And that was the best plan we had at the time. So thankful that we are continuing to grow. Yeah, right? You're like, yeah, that's a bad plan. That's not the best plan. But these moments you count, what do we do with it? You hold it. I don't want to hold it. Like it's a grenade. He's calling us in I've felt it for a while. I'm excited about it. But at the same time, this is what you need to know about the waters. The waters are scary. They can be terrifying. Not a spirit of fear, but the solemn recognition that this is serious. That we're moving into something that's serious, and you need to take it seriously. You don't ignore the waves. You don't ignore the wind. You don't ignore the might. You get on your knees. You get on your knees. So pray for us, elders and others, as we gather around tonight and begin to dream. If we're going to be a city on a hill, that takes some city planning, right? We're going to be a city on a hill, that takes some city planning. And we've got some good city planners. We clash, me and city planners. I just want to go. I'm like, easy, buddy. I'm like, oh, let's go. So thankful, so thankful. What's the difference between the wilderness and deep waters, Paul? How do I know the difference? They sound kind of the same. How would I know the difference? If you're in the wilderness, you're tired. If you're in the waters, you're terrified. Okay? If you're in the wilderness, you're tired. The soul is tired. You're exhausted. It's dry. Reading is dry. Prayer is dry. Fellowship is dry. If you're in the waters, you're terrified. You're overwhelmed. One's driving you to obedience, one's driving you to prayer. Two different places, two different purposes. Okay? Maybe that will help clarify. What's the difference between the prison and the pit? Because they sound like they're kind of the same. What's the difference between the prison and the pit? One's rooted in your actions, the other one's rooted in your attitude. One's rooted in your actions. Sinful actions that have established strongholds in your heart, in your mind. Spiritual strongholds that he needs to shatter, that he needs to break. The pit, that's your attitude. You got to check your heart, dude. You really got to check your heart. But in his steadfast love, he restores the children that cry out to him. Jesus in all of it. Can you hear echoes of Jesus' words in his restoration in the wilderness, that he's the bread of life? For the one in sin, he's the deliverer. He's the redeemer. I mean, that's how the psalm starts, right? Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His steadfast love endures. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so, whom he has redeemed from trouble. The one who walks on the waters and calms the seas. Jesus leverages our place to lovingly pick up our pace. Well, what do you need to do this morning? Here's a couple of suggestions. The first one is think. Please think. Thinking is hard. That's why most people don't do it. Okay? Thinking is hard. This is why most people don't do it. But look at what verse 43 is calling you to. Whoever is wise, let him attend to these things. Let them consider, think on, wrestle with, reflect, meditate on the steadfast love of the Lord. You got to think. You need to ask yourself, where am I? Where am I? Am I in the wilderness? Am I in a prison of sin? Do I need to ask Jesus to set me free? Have I dug myself into a hole out of my own arrogance and brought my family to the brink of death? Am I in deep waters? Because God has a beautiful haven for me. Jesus has something wonderful for me. Remember, the closer you get to the end zone, the more the enemy pushes against you, right? It's not that you're going in the wrong direction. It's actually because you're going in the right direction. You need to prayerfully consider, wrestle with, where am I? Where am I? Do you need to cry out? You're not supposed to stay there. You're not supposed to stay in that place. Paul, I'm in the wilderness. Good, get out of it. Paul, I'm in a pit. Good, you need to get out of it. Paul, I'm in deep waters. Good, you need to get out of it. Cry to him, and in his steadfast love that endures forever, let him move you forward, maybe into obedience, maybe into prayer, maybe it's deliverance. Cry out, verbalize, say it, sing it, preach it, pray it. You get it out of here and out there. And watch what he does. Watch what he does. Cry out. His steadfast love, his devotion, his commitment to you. Because at the end of the day, it's not what you have done. It's what Jesus has done. Thirdly, thank him. Thank him. If you have been brought through the wilderness, you give him thanks. If you've been brought out of the prison, you give him thanks. If you've been brought out of the pit, you give him thanks. If you've been brought through deep waters, you give him thanks. There's a couple of things repeated in each scene. Did you catch it? Crying out to him and in his steadfast love. Give thanks to him. And what you see as that psalm continues to grow and grow and grow, this amazing crescendo of musical grace. It's amazing that the thanks starts individually and then it continues. And then thank them in the congregation. Then thank them with song and thank them with joy. You give him thanks. You sit someone down. Say, hey, can I share with you what he's done for me? I was in this place, and he's brought me to here. Why is that important? One, he deserves it. He deserves it. Two, they need to hear it. They might be in the exact same place that you are, or they will be. They will be. And three, you better not forget it. Don't you forget what he has done for you. Don't you forget the grace poured individually into your space and place to move you forward in your faith. Oh, he deserves it. They need to hear it, and you better not forget it. Artists, would you come up? As the artists are coming up, and Adam's going to prepare the table for us. I'm excited about this. In Joshua chapter 4, Israel had been wandering in the wilderness. And they come up to the Jordan River. And they come to the Jordan River at springtime, water time. It's wide, it's fast. There's no way you're just walking across. Like, you know, sometimes you can walk across like the river, it's low, like in August. Yeah, it's fun. It's collecting crawfish and minnows. This is not that. This is not that, okay? This is serious waters. This is waters you can't get through. This is deep waters. Isn't that interesting? They came right out of the wilderness, right into deep waters. So the command goes out, march the Ark of the Covenant into the river. The priests carry it upon the poles, and as they hit the water is held back so that God and his people will go through on dry land as the ark stands there. Before they're allowed to move forward, they're commanded to do this. Each of the tribes, each of the families, okay, is to go and get a large stone from the middle of that deliverance and set it up on the other side, on promised side. It's a stone of remembrance. It's an Ebenezer. Lord, I lift my Ebenezer, a stone of remembrance to you. And they make this pile of 12 stones. Before they can go forward, they have to establish a habit of thanksgiving. And God tells them, these stones are here so that in generations to come, when people ask, why are these stones here? He'll tell the story that in the same way God brought us through the Red Sea, he brought us on dry ground through this river, that we would remember the steadfast love of the Lord. It might be possible. One of the reasons you're not moving enough is because you're not thanking him enough. You're not moving forward enough because you haven't thanked him enough for what he's already done. Thank you for sharing your time with us, and we'd love for the journey to continue. If you're a guest, would you consider reaching out to us? We would love to come alongside and encourage you in any way that we can. If you're someone who's joined us today and you are desperately reaching to find hope wherever you can, again, Jesus came that we would find hope. You can find hope today. If you want to send us a short note, a member of our Hope team would reach out quickly, promptly, to come alongside and see what we can do to encourage you in whatever storm you might find yourself in. That's why Jesus came. That's why we're here. Jesus said there's two ways to live your life, and a wise man, a wise woman, builds their life on Jesus' instructions. God bless.